Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Meeta and Tosh show. This is where everything talent attraction meets employment law. And Tosh and I bring in the Q&A sessions today. Hi, Tosh. How are you doing?
I'm good. What about yourself? You all right?
Really good. Really nice to be back. Actually, this is the first time in a few weeks that it's just the two of us.
Yeah, all right. Yeah. Well, you know what? We're just trying to put some good out there. I think that's working from the feedback that we're getting. People are, getting some information they can use. We don't want to be just theoretical about stuff. We want to put some good out there that they can use, take away, implement, real problem solving approaches is what we're looking at, right?
100%. Everyone dedicated. We know time is precious. Even everyone being at home, time is still so precious. We're busier than ever. So the time that everyone gives, the 30 to 40 minutes that we do in these sessions, it really has to add value to you all. So yes, practical, obviously legal updates, practical information, and sharing as a business community how we can all bounce back from this pandemic and get back to thriving. That's what Tosh and I are here to do. So thank you to everyone.
I just want to thank everybody. The feedback has been tremendous. Just very, very positive. We're trying to do as I say, put some good out there. And if we need to get that feedback to how we can do better, quite frankly, and give us some specific, Meeta and I were talking just before we started this, what really matters to you? What is it that we can really do to make a difference? Just, know that we're genuine about it. And if you can let us know, we'll tailor it. Otherwise, we'll come up with what we think about it, right?
Yeah. So Tosh and I are both talking a lot out to our community. I think I spoke to 10 different business leaders or heads of people in organizations, and it does feel like we're on the right tracks. There's certainly an uncertainty and it's not confusion, but we need to create clarity. And so today our topics are going to be, well, first of all, our promise to you is we will answer every question. Yes. So if we don't cover it off in the 30 to 40 minutes, Tosh and I will do a follow-up video and post that out to you all. Secondly, we are going to make sure that we use this chat space. If you look to the right, and thank you, Joellen has just said greetings and appreciation. Hi from us, Joellen. Thank you for coming on board. And please share your thoughts here, guys. It can be questions, it can be comments. It really does help everyone. And we also have a poll going, which we would really appreciate everyone starting to complete. And we've already got wow. So the question on the poll today is, are you planning on making redundancies? 3 options, yes, no, and undecided. So let's keep an eye on those and we'll come back to that at the end.
Well, and we'll be talking about redundancies today as well anyway, won't we? Good idea. And that doesn't just mean employee rights. There's employer rights associated with the process as well. So we'll go for that.
Well, and I'm also going to talk about outplacements, Tosh, and we've got a free outplacement guide going out to everyone today because this is something we go out and do with businesses, helping them make some positive footprints. But I've got some really interesting stats. I love my stats, and I'll bring those up later in terms of redundancy and outplacement and how we go through this redundancy process is so important.
Great.
But shall we start, Tosh, with...
Yep. So what are our topics today, to be clear?
Say that again.
What are our topics today?
Yeah, so the 3 topics are going to be looking at the new furlough rules, really understanding Rishi Sunak has extended everything out to October, which is a real positive for organisations. We know that there's some flexible options in there, and we know that there's going to be a period of us starting to contribute ourselves. All of that will then dictate as and when we start to think about redundancies and bringing people back to work. So it's a big topic, but actually it all links today, doesn't it?
Yeah. I mean, even what I quite like is we were talking about the Rishi Sunak announcement on Friday, and your take on it was, well, how do we use that to get businesses, to bounce back? It's all well and good saying this is the scheme and this is what we're going to do, we are going to go through that. But I think your input on it in terms of how we apply that from a business owner point of view and how that works, I think will be really helpful to people.
Good, and apologies, I've got some action going on in the back there.
I'll apologise too then. I've got kids next door that are playing in the garden, so if there's any noise in the background, it's just life right now. I think we just do it.
We're all working from home. So just one of the stats around furlough that's really interesting is that a quarter of the workforce has now been furloughed. And since last week, 300,000 more workers were furloughed after Rishi Sunak's announcement. So it's just showing that, this is still something that is so important for businesses to be able to utilize to support them through this difficult time. However, there have been 1,900 reports of fraudulent use of the furlough scheme to the HMRC from employees telling HMRC that they are on furlough, but the bosses are asking them to work. So,
wow.
Yeah.
It's not unsurprising, to be honest, but it's going to be a matter of what are the penalties that they're going to incur as a result of being caught out now, I suppose.
Yeah. So it's really key that everyone here today can walk away truly understanding the new rules. So shall we start with that, Tosh?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's go straight into it. So what I've done, Meeta, is I like to kind of condense all the information into a nutshell as much as I can. So I've broken it into 4 elements here. And the first element of the new scheme relates to part-time working. The second part relates to how it's being closed to new entrants. So there's a deadline for when you can make an employee furloughed for the first time that's coming up, or that's now out and about. I'm going to talk about the level of government support moving forward. That means from now until the end of October. 31st of October is the cut-off date. This scheme is over. They've been unequivocal about that. They're done with it at that stage. And then the last thing I just wanted to talk about was how to make a claim. So those are the 4 sections I was going to go through with you right now, okay?
Thank you, sir. It's clear as mud for me, so I'm probably going to be asking some of my own questions.
Yeah, please do. Any questions you've got, obviously, people are saying that they have. And as Meeta said, there's a chat box on the right. We'll just be dipping in and out. Just ask as we go along. You don't need to wait till the end. So the first thing I want everybody to be aware of is the 1st of July is the key date. And that from that date onwards, employers can bring their employees back to work. They can bring them back to work as little or as much as they like in accordance with the business needs. Okay, so that's the key first thing. Yeah. Second thing with that is the employers need to agree the hours and the shift patterns. And from the 1st of July, employers are going to be responsible for paying the tax and national insurance in full. The next thing is that
from the 1st of August or the tax and national insurance from
the 1st of July.
Wow. Okay.
The next thing it says here is that. Say again, sorry?
I said it's good that we're doing this because I had that as the 1st of August.
Yeah, I've got to what's happening on that date, and I'll get to that very, very quickly and very shortly, okay? So the next thing is that you need to have it in writing, exactly what those working arrangements are, and any working arrangements put in writing have to cover at least a period of 1 week. So what that means,
that confused me.
What that means in English is, for example, if you're my employee, Meeta, I ask you to come in for 2 days a week and the 3 days are furloughed. Before, or currently, the system doesn't allow that. There had to be a minimum of a 3-week furlough period. That's going out the window from the 1st of July, so you can mix and match according to what the needs of the business are, either that's full-time or part-time, okay?
Yeah.
But the key is it has to be in writing.
Okay, so at this point, I have a question, which I imagine a lot of the audience have too, which is that as I was speaking to people over the last couple of days about the new scheme and how we can use it from a bouncing back perspective and getting people back in and working, somebody told me that there was a mailer from the HMRC, which I've seen, that said, if you want to furlough any of your existing working people, and you want them to work part-time from the 1st of July, you actually have to put them on furlough before the 10th of June because they need to do 3 weeks full furlough before they can be considered for part-time in July.
That's the next section, in fact, so exactly that. So that is covered under the bit where they're closing the scheme for new entrants. So what it's saying is that on the 30th of June, they're closing anything for new entrants. 30th of June. So, and because at the moment there's a 3-week minimum furlough period, that means that the last date that you can put an employee on furlough is the 10th of June.
Yeah, good. And that for me was quite, it's obvious when you understand the rules, but as we're reading the new stuff, that wasn't quite clear to me. So that really helps. And guess what, Tosh? It is the 1st of August. I get a brownie point.
Did you really? Maybe I've read that bit.
And we've got Lauren and Natalie also saying. So, so July actually, in terms of financial support from the government, it continues as it has always. However, if we are going to put people back on a part-time basis, we will have to then cover that cost. But again, my question to you was: is there?
Correct. Sorry, I know you've already told me that's correct. I misread the notes there. That's correct.
So, is there a minimum period that people have to work? And I thought it was a week that they had to work, but you've told me it can be.
It isn't. The 1 week period, just so people are clear about it, that's the claiming period. So you can only claim for a period of 1 week, but you can pick and mix and do whatever you like to do, days on, days off, but you need to have the clear working pattern for a minimum period of 1 week. So what I'm saying is you can't decide on a day-by-day basis. You need to agree that shift pattern for at least a week. I imagine employers are going to be doing it for the next 2 weeks or a month.
And this was a question from Ruella, actually. So the question, we may have just answered it. Can you currently take someone out of furlough for a couple of days, or does it have to be a full week? So can you just clarify that? We have to consider the full week.
No. So all of this starts from the 1st of July.
Yes.
So we don't do it now. So when she says we take off somebody off furlough now, no. 1st of July, yes. Have it in writing, agree it in advance, and then you know what what the shift patterns are and coming off furlough is, or part-time furlough.
So to answer that question from a business perspective, the way I understand it is that we have to consider a week, but it can be 2 days, 1 day, or anything like that within that week. So you have to look a week ahead at any one time and confirm it in writing what their pattern will be in that week. But it could be 2 days. So yes.
Put another way, Meeta, it's just plan a minimum of 1 week of how somebody's going to work furlough or not.
Yeah.
That's what it
Another
is.
question here from Philippa is, can they be furloughed on the 10th of July or would it need to be the 9th? It's June, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, so the 10th of June is the last date that somebody can be put on furlough for the first time, okay? After that, they're going to be excluded.
Okay. Now, Joellen has some questions as well. Are you all right answering some of these? Let's have a look. So we've got one about redundancies. Let's come back to...
I just thought, Meeta, before we go to the questions, shall I just finish off the last few sections of the cover? Because it may well that it then addresses the questions anyway, right?
Very true. I'll hold tight. You go for it.
So we talked about part-time working. We've talked about the closing date for new entrants. Now I'm going to talk about the level of government support, which is what you corrected me on, in fact. So the first thing is that just remember, throughout this period, employees are still getting 80%. Okay? Yeah. They are still receiving 80% of their income. The difference now in the scheme is how much will the government cover and how much will you as employers have to top up or not. So from the 1st of August, employers, there's 80% of wages still covered, but employers will be paying national insurance contributions and pensions on furlough pay in full. Yeah. Exactly what you guys said.
And that works out to around 16 to 17%, because I think employers' NIC is 13.8% and pensions are minimum of 3 to 5%. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Okay.
For the 1st of September, the contribution will be 70% of wages from the government scheme, which is capped at £2,187.50p.
Okay.
Again, employers will have to pay the 10% on top, so that it's still 80% of the salary the employees are getting. And they'll pay national insurance contributions and pension contributions. I won't keep saying that anymore because obviously that's already happening, all right?
Okay.
Then the last leg of the scheme is the 1st of October to the end of October. And that is 60% of wages or a cap of £1,875.
Okay.
And again, now the employers will have to top up the 20%. So that, again, they're getting 80% in total, right? Yeah. It's open to employers whether they want to top up to the full amount as it was before, okay?
Yeah. Okay.
And the end of the scheme is 31st of October, and we're going to talk about what decisions people need to make after that during this as well. So that's the cutoff point. And then there's the last bit I just want to quickly talk about, and then we'll go through the questions, which is how to make the claim. So I'm going to do it backwards. So at the moment, we have an idea about those things. The absolute guidance on making a calculation is going to be out on the 12th of June, which is next Friday. Okay. So the first thing is employers need to claim for a minimum period of a week for grants to be calculated accurately across working patterns. So we talked about that already. I probably have done it to death. They can choose longer periods if they like, for example, from monthly periods of time or fortnightly, okay? From the 1st of July, claim periods will no longer be able to overlap over calendar months. So the claim has to be within the same month. You can't do it from the I'll make it up, from the 20th of July to the 20th of August. Okay, it's within the month. Within the calendar month.
Okay.
The 31st of July is the deadline for claims in the period up to the 30th of June.
Right, say that again.
So if you're making a claim for any furlough periods up to the 30th, that's before the new regime kicks in, the deadline to make a claim for that period up to the 30th of June is the end of July.
Okay.
So you've got
it's
time.
A month arrears,
so if I break it down like this, if you're putting an employee on the furlough for the first time, if they're already in furlough, it doesn't matter. If you're putting an employee on furlough for the first time, do it by the 10th of June.
Yeah.
You can make a claim for that period up to the 30th, obviously, by the end of July.
Yeah.
So you've got an additional month, basically, to make that claim, submit it, okay? And the last thing I want to talk to you about, which I said right at the beginning, was you can make you can make your claims initially from the 1st of July. So you can actually start making claims from that point. So if you've got the plan ahead for the week or the fortnight or the month, there's no reason you can't submit it from the 1st of July. And the 12th of June, that's the date I want everyone to look out for, next Friday, where the government will be providing more detailed guidance on exactly how the calculations are done. And no doubt Meeta will be putting that out there to break that down for people as simply as it can be.
Yeah, very much so. So it really is a truly flexible approach to getting people back to work. And it's quite exciting, isn't it? Because first it was June, then it was July. We've now got another quarter of support in some capacity that will give us all as businesses and not-for-profit organisations getting that financial support to allow us to keep working, to evolve, into a new world, and to support as many people to continue to work in that time. So it's really important that we all start thinking about how we can utilise this flexible option to get some people back to work.
I mean, it's a bit of a balancing exercise, isn't it? It's all well and good saying that, and now we've got the support mechanism for people to come back and forth, but companies still need to generate the income to be able to pay their staff. So I suppose it just gives them some more flexibility anyway. Yeah,
it does. And we know that there's a far greater number of business interruption loans and bounce back loans. £31.3 billion has now been lent out by the government. So, hey, we need to start paying that back in 12 months. So how we structure ourselves with our people in that time is key. So I think this is why redundancy as an option is so key to start bringing into our mindset, because, we have to make sure our businesses are robust and able to withstand however long the slowdown is going to be for. So let's answer some of these questions, Tosh, and then we'll come on to redundancies. How does that sound?
Yep, let's do that.
Awesome. Right, let's go back then. So we've got... So Jo Ellen is actually asking some questions around redundancies. So she's asking, is it accurate that redundancies after the 6th of April 2020 are capped at $538 per week? Is it possible to negotiate or even pay redundancy pay in instalments? And do we pay full to everyone once they've been given? Right, we've got 4 questions there. How should we cover this? Do you want to start? We'll do one by one, or do you want to talk about?
I'll do it one by one. So the first thing there, it says, is it accurate that redundancies after the 6th of April 2020 are capped at $538 per week? Yes, it is. Is it possible to negotiate or even pay redundancy by instalments? Yes, it is.
Okay.
The reality is this: if you can't afford to pay it in one go, is it Jo or Jo Ellen?
Jo Ellen.
If it's not possible to pay it in one go, Jo Ellen, then you just agree a sensible instalment plan with them. Because what are they going to do about it? If you can't afford it, you can't afford it. They can take you to court or take you to tribunal, but the tribunal will only see that you've done what you've done reasonably. So you can do that, is the answer.
The all important word. And also, Tosh, is fair. It's really important for business owners and those that are dealing with their people in their organisation to know that we can actually, and Gordon Ramsay was in the news for this, use the furlough scheme to cover some of the notice period costs. Is that right?
That's right, yes.
Yeah. So if somebody was going to pay 50%, they'd have to top it up to the full 100%. But that means it would only cost the employer 20% in July, 30% in August, and so on.
I just want to put a slight caveat, because it's unnecessarily complicated, clearly drafted by lawyers. There's different rules and different devices that people can use to get full pay. There's different rules that apply. It's probably a whole topic by itself. So I'm going to say, yes, you can use the furlough, pay furlough for the notice period, but just know that there are likely to be cases coming up, and you know what, tribunals are not going to want employers to get away with giving employees less than they should do because they've got a government scheme to avoid redundancy. So there are various devices that a tribunal could use to make sure they get their pay topped up. But we won't know that until that goes out there. So at the moment, the advice is just what you've just said. They can be paid their furlough pay during the notice, okay? It says here, do we have to pay full pay to everyone once they have been given notice? What you've just said, you've answered that question already. What are the implications of making someone redundant while they're on maternity leave? Well, so the situation is the same. If there's a genuine redundancy, the situation is the same. There's no. You have to look at them like any other employee. The difference with a person on maternity, they've got the right to return to the same terms and conditions after the maternity leave period. So if there's no job anymore, you'll make them redundant like anybody else.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Right. Gemma is asking, we've covered this, but I agree, Gemma, we really need to make this clear. Is new entrants relating to those that have not previously been on furlough or through the scheme, or everyone, regardless of whether they have been in already for a minimum of 3 weeks?
Previously not been on the scheme.
So how would that work in practice? So
in practice, if you've got, you've just taken on another employee, you've never put anybody on furlough, or perhaps they've been working and they've just not been put on furlough, you've got until the 10th to put them on furlough for the first time. If you've already put them on furlough before, then there's no problem.
Yeah, I mean, actually, they've got till the 30th of June to furlough people, even for the first time, right? But they couldn't.
10th of June, Meeta, 10th of June.
No, so 10th of June is if they want to have the option of making them part-time from the 1st of July. But the government ruling says to the 30th of June to put people on. No,
so we're getting confused on it. So the 30th of June is the cutoff date. It's a bit. Let me be clear. The 30th of June is the cutoff date for new entrants.
Yes,
you're correct.
Yeah.
The reason I'm saying the 10th of June is the deadline for furloughing them, because the current law says they've got to be at least furloughed for 3 weeks. So if you decide to put somebody on the 11th of June, there isn't a minimum 3-week period for them to be able to be put on furlough.
Now that's confused me.
So in that case, just accept it as a fact that the 10th of June is the deadline for furloughing for an employee for the first time. If you've done it before and they've already been furloughed before, and even if they've been brought back to work or anything else like that, that's fine. But if you're looking to bring somebody onto furlough that has never been put on furlough before, you've got until the 10th of June.
All right.
If that needs more clarification, we'll have to do that separately.
Yeah, and I'm going to ask everyone to put on the right what they think it is, because we're both seeing this in a different way, which is good, because we'll get the clarity. Right, we've got David here saying, if I'm not intending to use the new furlough scheme, can you put someone on full-time furlough after the 10th of June up to the end of July? I think yes. You think no.
I know no. It's not correct. It's not correct, because it's very clear. The guidance there says you've got to put them for the first time by the 10th of July. If you miss that deadline, you don't have the opportunity to put them on furlough for the first time.
10th of June.
June, sorry, yes. Even I'm saying the wrong ones. Yep, correct.
All right. Well, you're the lawyer, so I'm going to listen to you.
I'll take full responsibility and liability for that advice.
Right. Isabel is asking, I have a lady who returns from maternity leave on the 27th. Would she return too late to go on mat leave? I think she means on furlough. Yeah,
so according to those rules, that is confusing, isn't it? That doesn't make any sense, that they would not be able to come back and be furloughed in those situations. So I think what we'll do, Meeta, is we'll really nail that part shut in our follow-up video, and I'll address that maternity leave, because you're right, that's confusing. Even if that doesn't, I would have normally have said, yeah, they come back on furlough.
Yeah, so my understanding is that people can be furloughed up to the 30th of June. After that, the scheme continues, but for people that are already on. If you want to make somebody a part-time worker from the 1st of July onwards, they would have had to have completed 3 weeks of furlough before then, which means 10th of June is the cutoff for putting anyone new. But if you want to furlough people and keep them on furlough, the way I've understood it is that they can be furloughed up to the 30th of June. So I think we do need a separate. We'll go back and have a look, and we'll make sure we get this clear for everyone.
Fine, but that question there about the maternity leave, that's a good one. Let me come back to you that one, Isabel. We'll do that with our follow-up video, which will be later today. Right?
Yeah, they wouldn't be able to be put on maternity, on furlough when they come back in the middle of
June. That doesn't seem right to me, because what happens to them?
Yeah, they'd have to come back to employment. But that's the thing. The rule.
Basically, if there's no job, there'll be no furlough, is what that says, which doesn't seem right to me at all.
Yeah.
That's why I'm sure there's something around that. So we'll have an answer today anyway. We'll have an answer today.
And that ruling of the 19th of March still stands. So nobody can be furloughed unless they were employed on the 19th of March. So that's
unless you're on the PAYE system. That's right. Real time, RTI, PAYE.
Right. We've got another question here. So Dominique is asking, when a person works on shift pattern, must the company pay the employee at full rate for days worked?
Yes.
But only for the hours they've worked?
Yes.
Right. We're getting through them. Jane asks, after the 1st of July, can we bring someone back off furlough full-time and then furlough them again? That's a really good question.
Yes.
Because they've been furloughed before.
Correct.
As long as they've been furloughed for a minimum of 3 weeks before they come off.
That's correct.
Good. Right. Kate's asking a question. If someone is on furlough and they are made redundant, do we use their 80% furlough pay as the new statutory weekly amount if this is lower than the 538?
No.
What is it then?
So the cap is 538 per week if the person earns more than that. If they earn less than that in a normal week. This is not a normal week. Okay, these I know it might be normal after a given period of time, I suppose, of years or something, but it isn't. So they would receive 538 for as a cap, unless and if they get less than that, obviously then their week's pay is calculated on whatever their week's pay is.
Cool, thank you. Francis is asking, when people were initially furloughed, it was difficult for most businesses to make anything but a speedy decision as to whom, if they are in redundancies, will they say they have been pre-selected and the selection is then unfair? So this is good, bringing the furlough and the redundancy into one.
So I'm going to flip it a different way around. You've got to justify why you've made your decision. They might say it's unfair. They might say it's pre-selected. You've got to be able to demonstrate, well, what was the criteria? How do we select them? How do we score? We're going to do a quick whistle-stop tour through that in a minute, I think, with the redundancies. I appreciate I'm conscious of time. But yeah, they might say that, but it's down to you as an employee to show why it was a fair reason and that the process and thinking and deciding why they're being selected is clear and fair as well, okay?
Okay, thank you. We're going to come to that. Tosh, 10th of June is the out-and-out winner from the audience as well. Everyone's saying that.
I didn't realise it was a competition.
No, it's not. But it is, and this is why we have.
No, that's right. We need to be clear. Absolutely.
And this is
it's confusing language, isn't it? Of course it is.
It is, and it's so difficult because so many employees could get called out. I know if I didn't have this platform, I'd have been called out. So, thank you.
I love the way we're all just passing information around and figuring that together. That's good.
How to use it. Yeah. Dominique asks, to furlough someone for the first time, the deadline. Oh, she's letting us know the deadline for them to get the 80% from the government only is the 10th of June as of the 1st of July. Right.
Yes.
Thank you. Helen's asking, can we bring people back early from maternity leave, i.e. over the next few days, and then furlough them by the 10th?
I'm going to say let's address that at the same time as the other query that we had, because it's really relating to the same thing.
Yeah.
I just want to be clear with people about what are they supposed to do with employees that are coming back from maternity leave. Just give us a little time. We'll do a video on it today, Helen, and you'll be getting that video answer as well, and we'll address it that way, because that seems a bit conflicting, the information I've got at the moment in my mind. It's sort of fleshed it out for everybody. Yeah,
that would be good. We'll do a follow-up around maternity and how that's impacted, because we're all learning in real time, aren't we? This is something that we've tried. It's been, there's no case law around it.
It's got to be, Meeta, in my thought is, it's got to be that they're allowed to be furloughed. But then that's inconsistent with what we just talked about with the first time that somebody's furloughed.
Yeah.
But it just seems very wrong that someone coming up from maternity leave is going to be in a worse-off situation. So we'll find that out very quickly.
We'll get clarity. And David's asked for the clarity on the 10th or 30th, and you've given it as the 10th. Rana's asking actually around redundancy and how to create a selection process. So Rana's question is, what principles would you suggest employers use to select which employees to bring back from furlough, i.e. if you have 10 people on furlough but only need to bring 5 back? So I think this is more of a kind of business application, sort of an application of the process and of the scheme rather than a legal question. And it really comes round to the 3 steps that I've suggested, and I did a little video on this, is all around really what your business needs are. And I think first and foremost, it's really key that your senior team, so your chief exec, your head of people and your head of finance are at least on the same page, so what financial support you have in the organization, what the strategic direction of the business is now under the new current circumstances, and then we apply the rule of which people you need for what the organization needs going forward. And in terms of the legal aspect, which I'll just refer back to you, Tosh, is once we've established how many we need, there has to be a selection process does there have to be a selection process to bring people back off furlough, as there might be for redundancy?
It's one aspect of the whole redundancy process. So the first thing I think we need to be very clear about is employees with less than 2 years service do not have employment rights for unfair dismissal.
Yeah.
So you're not required to go through a normal redundancy process necessarily, depending on the number of people, I suppose. So those would be very easy decisions to make for those people. They can be just given their notice and their holiday entitlement, and bye-bye is the brutal way I'll say it to you. For anybody with more than 2 years, you've got to have a fair reason for redundancy and a fair process. Fair reason means there's no longer a requirement for the job.
See, I don't think this is about redundancy, actually. I think this is about who they bring back off furlough.
Oh, I see.
Leave on furlough till the end of October. But then you're right, at some point, that will then become a redundancy conversation.
I'm not sure it's that difficult to an answer. I think the reality is, you know who your staff are.
Yeah.
You can choose who the best people are that you want to bring back. There's no discrimination issue about it, or whether else it is, as long as it isn't a protected characteristic of any kind. Yeah. So what would I do? Well, if I had my people on furlough and I only need 5 back, I'll leave the others on furlough because it's not costing me anything at the moment. The issue will be whether you can start to afford the top-ups that will start to come into play in the later months, in September and October.
Yeah. Rana, my addition to that would be to do a bit of a role evaluation based on the outcomes that you want to achieve as an organisation. So if you as a senior leadership team can define what the next 3 and 6 months would look like, then reevaluate your people with their skill sets. And something Tosh said, which, again, I'm going to ask Tosh if we can do. Tosh spoke about going between one set of furloughed people and another. You rotating. So you said you could unfurlough one group for 3 weeks and then put them back.
That was the way you were advising to do it before.
So, yeah.
Now you can chop and change, quite frankly, because there's so much flexibility. But you just have to identify what the pit pattern is for somebody for a minimum of 1 week.
Yeah. So,
Meeta, I'm very conscious of the time now, and we've still got quite a big topic to address.
Let's talk about redundancy. Now, there's just a couple of stats I wanted to cover off because I think it says a lot about how important redundancy and outplacement is. So currently, we are split a third with the poll. So with the poll asking, are you planning on making redundancies? 36% said yes, 27% said no, and 36% said undecided. So here, let us help you have a think about that. 70% of respondents who were made redundant said that they felt that it was handled in a very poor manner and that they felt that their employer should give them more support when offboarding. 70% said that they felt that the support in searching for a new role would have been so much more positive for them if they'd have had financial advice, career coaching and mental health support, which impacted their future success. And only 16% that felt that their redundancy process was handled well and that they trusted their employer to handle it well. And over half said that they would share bad redundancy experience on social media, review sites, and with family and friends. So there's a real risk to reputation. And for that reason, I'm going to share my outplacement guide with everyone to help you all go through a checklist of what's important to consider and why we do that outplacement support for our clients to make sure that they can part with positive footprints. So
that's really helpful because people need to know what to do next.
Yeah.
About what to do now, and I think that'd be very, very good for them.
Yeah. So let's talk about redundancy and what employers need to consider when thinking about who to make redundant, Tosh.
I think everybody is going to be forced to consider this at the very least when this falls off the cliff at the end of October. There's no more support. You're either going to be able to thrive and carry on in whatever way you're doing, or you're going to shut shop. So if you're looking at redundancies, from a legal point of view, obviously, I'm looking at how you can protect yourself as a business. You need to have a fair redundancy in law. So this applies to people with 2 years or more. Less than 2 years, you don't need to follow these processes, and it's quite straightforward. It can be just with your notice pay and holiday pay. Don't even have to have a meeting necessarily with them. It can be done over the phone or what have you, okay? Yeah. So, but the difficulty, the stats you just said is that people... a lot of companies don't know how to handle these things because it's such a difficult situation and it's stressful for everybody, and people are going. So they're kind of like, well, look, this is it. They don't want to get into the niceties or the emotional side of it because you start to get lost in what it's about. You need to make a decision, right?
I think employers are afraid of being too warm and too engaging when they're doing a very difficult job. And that our advice is always to continue with the respectful and positive approach for a very difficult process. It is a very difficult process.
I just think you don't need to do these things in an unpleasant way. It is what it is. It's not personal. We're not selecting them. I'm assuming it's not. We're not selecting them because we don't like them or because of something, whatever else it is. There's a criteria. So let me go through that very quickly with you now, so everybody has a very clear idea. Number one, for a fair redundancy in law, you need to have a genuine redundancy reason. That means there's no longer a requirement for a job of a particular kind. That happens in one of three situations, right? Either the business closes down in its entirety, so everyone loses their job, or there's less work coming in, so you don't need as many people. I think that's what most people are facing. Or the third one is where there's a restructure. So there isn't necessarily a change in how much work is coming in, but perhaps we have improved efficiencies, so we can have less people doing the same amount of work. Either way, it results in a reduction in head count. Yeah. So if you can show there's no longer a requirement for a job of a particular kind, that's a tick. That's the first tick. The second thing is you need a fair procedure. If you don't have a fair reason or a fair procedure, it's an unfair dismissal in law, which is worth up to about 88.5 grand a year for the year, or a year's pay, whichever is the less, okay? So it's important to kind of get it right. There's ways around it, but I won't get into that right now. Number one is you need to have meaningful consultation with your employees. That means have a grown-up conversation with your staff about what's happening, why it's happening, why are they at risk, what will happen if they're made redundant, what is the process. Just be transparent and open about it. Yeah. The period of time that the consultation has to take place for is dependent on the number of employees that are at risk. So if it's 20 to 99 employees at risk of redundancy, the minimum consultation period is 30 days. If it's 100 or more, it's 45 days. If it's under 20, it's just whatever's reasonable in the circumstances. So maybe a couple of weeks will do. The longer the consultation period, normally the fairer it will be, right? Because you're just talking with your staff. Yeah. Second thing is selection criteria, which is where I kind of got lost in the earlier question with the furloughing, right? Selection criteria has to be something that's fair, objective, and measurable. So if you've got a standalone person doing one job and that job's gone, well, you don't need a selection criteria, right? It's just them. Yeah. If there's a group of them, well, you need to decide how are you picking the people to go and stay. So, for example, if I have 10 employment lawyers and I need to make five at risk of redundancy because we haven't got enough work coming in, I have to apply a criteria to determine what are the best skills to retain. So, for example, for me, it might be who are the best fee earners, who are the ones that win the most tribunal cases, who gets the best feedback, or whatever matters for a skill set, right? Yeah. What's key is that it's recorded, right? That's what's key. Either you have it as something that's measurable like appraisal systems, or if you don't, you're going to have to just justify your scoring, which is the next bit. So once you're clear on each criteria, you have to score each one. So let's say it's 0 to 10, 10 being the best, 0 being the worst. You have to be able to stand up and say, you got a 5 because of this. If the employee says, well, why didn't I get a 6? You have to have almost like a criteria for your criteria. How is the scoring applied? Also, different categories have different importance to you as a business. So perhaps, for example, maybe fee earning is the main thing for me, or maybe winning cases, in which case I might put a multiplier of 2 on their score, because that's more important than just attendance or whatever other little things that we're looking at, right? That's the second thing. Third thing is, just because the person is redundant, the job is redundant, doesn't mean the person is redundant. You've got an obligation as an employer to look at suitable alternative employment, which means something in keeping with skills, qualifications, hours, that sort of stuff. And then once you've gone through all those processes, redundancy can be confirmed as the last reasonable resort. If you can show that there's no other jobs, you've done all the different consultation, you've applied the criteria fairly, explained it, and redundancy is the last reasonable resort, that will be a fair dismissal in law. There's just 2 quick things I want to chuck in there, which aren't a legal requirement, but it might be something that a judge might look at in terms of whether it's fair or not. Number one is bumping. Bumping is where somebody else is not at risk of redundancy, but if I'm at risk of redundancy, I could do their job better than they can. So then I would go in a pool with them. They could make that other person redundant because I'm better at the job than them, but applying the same criteria. They're off and I stay. That's called bumping. I'll bump them off, right? And that's why in a redundancy process. Because if it's fair and reasonable, because why? Because the company's looking to retain the best skills that they need right now in their business, because we're looking at downturn and work and so forth. Yeah. And the last thing also that should be considered at least is furlough. Once it's around as an alternative to redundancy, that's what the scheme is for. Yeah. It would be unreasonable not to consider it. I appreciate it's a voluntary scheme, but then you might have reasons for not doing it, particularly now that, you as employers are now having your hands in your pockets more. Yeah. And that actually is a question from Gemma. So Gemma asks, when making consideration of redundancies, can it be deemed unfair if we have the furlough scheme in place to sustain employment until the end of October? So would it be unfair or unlawful to make people redundant if there's a furlough scheme in place? No. Okay. You can make them redundant whilst they're on furlough. Again, you just need to be able to explain why that's fair and reasonable in the circumstances. I don't think it would be that difficult for you to explain, because otherwise you would keep them on furlough, wouldn't you? Yeah.
and we are really close to 40 minutes, which is our top end. So, guys, two things we're going to answer. Hopefully, have time to answer one more question, but we're going to go back and get real clarity on the 10th of June and the 30th. I definitely need it, and I'm sure some of you guys do too. And then we're also going to revisit maternity.
Yeah, absolutely.
Follow-up Q&A session. I'm also going to do some notes on that about outplacement, because we haven't had a chance to cover it today, and I think these are really key things to consider. We are close to 40 minutes, Tosh. Shall we wind this up and then do the rest on the Q&A?
I'd like to say one more thing. I recently did a webinar on redundancy processes, so I'll just add that as a link, just so people have a bit more detail, because I know we rushed it towards the end there, but the follow-up video will be coming out later today. Thank you everybody for watching.
Thank you so much, and thanks for
next week
on the poll as well. We'll see you next week. All the best.
Bye.
Bye.